Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Got a bit of a downer today because I think the political scene here in the UK is somewhat depressing, and I was talking to today's guest before bringing him onto the show, and I was telling him how I'm envious of their political system in Canada, but actually he assured me that they have their own problems over there, so maybe we're all in this together. But I do think that no matter where you're listening to me in the world, for the most part, technology is tearing down barriers and bringing the world closer together as we all seamlessly work together side by side, despite being thousands of miles apart. And that is what excites me about this podcast, because we do have listeners all over the world and we're all learning together every single day. But before I get too cheesy and sentimental, today's guest is Dwayne Brown, who runs a digital marketing agency called Take Some Risk. And he has helped brands including ASOS, Jack Wills and Mopp grow through pay-per-click marketing and much more. But not only that, he's got a fascinating human story behind his tech company. So I invited him on the show today to talk about how to grow any business through PPC campaigns, and also learn more about how visiting 40 countries and working as a digital nomad has shaped his career and indeed his outlook on life. And of course, we'll also delve into anything else tech-related and around digital marketing. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Toronto in Canada so we can speak with Dwayne Brown. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure, Neil. My name is Dwayne Brown, and I'm Canadian, but my accent may make you think I'm American. I sometimes have a bit of a British accent if I'm talking to British friends. And I run a cool digital agency out here in Canada. Most of our clients, though, are American. I think they like the idea of hiring a Canadian versus hiring a fellow American. I spent a couple years living in London, and I miss it dearly every day. I've spent a bit of time living in Australia working for a big telecom. And our focus these days, though, is really e-commerce. So about 80% of our business is e-commerce clients, and the rest is, technology and SaaS brands, or, software as a service. So, the Netflixes and the Unbounces and stuff like that of the world. And our goal really is just to help clients make more money. I mean, that's really in a nutshell, regardless of what they say, they really hire us to make them more money.
You guys, as a digital marketing agency called Take Some Risk, appeared on my radar a few weeks ago. And I'm conscious going to be a few people listening that are just hearing about you for the first time. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you're actually leveraging technology to help huge brands such as ASOS, Jack Wills and Mopp all grow through pay-per-click marketing and more?
Yeah, I mean, we're a small team. And so, when I lived in the UK, when I live here now back in Canada, even in Australia, there's two ways you can tackle a problem. You can throw more people at it, but I think most people have learned throwing more people at a problem usually just makes it more complex because you have more people involved, and it's harder sometimes to get everyone to move in the same direction. But if you throw really good technology at a problem because you understand the problem really deeply, you can scale the technology for, a fraction of the cost of hiring tons of people. And so we're always looking for ways to just use technology, whether it's in reporting. So we use a tool called Supermetrics for all our reporting with clients. It helps us pull data from Google Analytics or, Shopify. A lot of our clients are on Shopify. Another Canadian success story. We pull data from Facebook, Google Ads. And so we've automated about 99% of our reporting. And that really frees up our time to think about strategy, think about other channels we can work with a client. One client we're thinking about trying to test out both Snapchat next year, but even just doing video remarketing on YouTube. So we're always looking for ways to take our manual processes and insert some technology in it just to speed it up. And even if we can only insert technology in steps, 2 to 5, but there are 10 steps in the process, that still frees up our time to work into other things. A lot of our clients are in e-commerce, so that means we do a lot of Google ads, shopping ads, and other platforms. And so we have a shopping vendor we use for a lot of that stuff. Some agencies might create shopping feeds from scratch, and we think that's a huge waste of time. It's better to throw some technology on it because it really is just data that you manipulate in a spreadsheet, for lack of a better word. So I was just looking to use technology to take manual processes, make them less manual, and free up our time just to work on strategic things, thinking about things, how to just help businesses grow. One of our clients hit $1 million in revenue this year, which was their goal. And so now I'm afraid they're going to come back to me next year and say, okay, well, we want to do, 3 million next year or 2.5. And so I've got to figure out how do I grow them without necessarily just throwing people at the problem.
And although this is a tech show, I do love hearing about the very human story behind every tech success story. So can I ask that you share your story, where I believe it involved visiting 40 different countries and working as a digital nomad, which has to be the very definition of living the dream, although you might tell me it's not as glamorous as people think it is. But can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Neil, sure. It's definitely one of those grasses always greener on the other sides. You look at companies from the outside and you think, oh my God, I'd love to work there. They'd be bloody awesome. But then you go and work inside and you're like, wow, this is not as good as it looked on the outside. And so I think being a digital nomad is really the same way. People think, oh, you get to work when you want and make your own hours and yada, yada, yada. But it's finding stable internet sometimes is not easy when you're in some countries. And if you have a job that's online, you need stable internet. Time zones can be a challenge if clients want to have a conversation with you. I've spent time in London even after I left. I go back usually a couple times a year. And so sometimes it's 11, 12 o'clock at night in London, but I'm having a conversation with a client because, they're on the West Coast or they're on the East Coast and it's still, their work day. So being a digital nomad isn't always what it's cracked up to be, but I do enjoy working on the road throughout the year because it gives me a chance to visit clients. It gives me a chance to speak at conferences. It does give me a chance to visit 40 countries. And I've really done 25 of those 40 countries, 26 of those 40 countries in the last probably 6 or 7 years. So I decided one day that I found it really hard to find a job in Canada. It's the classic, you're young, you're out of school, you're really hungry and you're smart, but you don't have tons of work experience, or you don't have the work experience that you want to get. So I moved to Australia. I didn't know anyone. I just got a visa because I was still under 31. I was young. I said, all right, I've got enough money to last me a few months. I'll either find a job or come home and sleep on my mom's couch if she'll let me have the couch to sleep on. But I went to Australia. I had a blast for 7 months. I worked for a big tech company. I traveled around, Australia a little bit and had some fun. And then I came home to Canada, still a bit of the recession in 2012 in Canada and just companies not sure if they want to hire or not. And I decided after 9 months that I'm just going to move to the UK because they speak English. I can still do what I do, which is run ads online for clients. And London is kind of like New York. So it's the gateway to the rest of Europe in advertising. So I moved to London and, I worked for the NSPCC, which in Canada would be Kids Help Phone. And I'm not sure what the American version would be, but basically, for those listeners who don't know, it's like if you're under 18 and you've got challenges or problems, you can call and talk to somebody who's a professional, like a counselor. So I worked for them for a couple months, working on ASOS, Jack Wills, and other brands. But when I was doing that work and I saved up enough money, basically every 5 weeks I picked a country and I just went somewhere. So I did 13 countries in the 2 years that I lived in London, and I did everything from the Nordic region of, Stockholm and Oslo and stuff like that, down to Morocco and just Germany and Brussels and Amsterdam and Tallinn. So I just went anywhere and everywhere that there was a cheap flight to go to and I hadn't been to, and I thought it'd be kind of fun. I even did Switzerland, which I didn't really like Switzerland, but that's, neither here nor there. But then when the company I worked for, because I was working for a startup at the end, they got bought by an American company, which is a good thing because we did a really good job building our brand, and they realized it was cheaper to buy us then try to enter the UK market for house cleaning or home cleaning. So everyone, including me, lost my job. My visa was almost up, so I couldn't get it renewed. So I went to travel in Asia for 10 weeks on my own. I had never been to Asia, but I always wanted to go. And it was still very much a culture shock versus what you'd see on TV, because what you see on TV is true, but it's not it's everything you see. And so going to 10 weeks, 21 cities, 12 different countries, dozens of flights, buses, just crisscrossing countries. In between, the 2 years in London and that Asia trip, I pretty much, completed 26 countries almost. And it was, I'd say, life-changing going to Asia because it's the first time I'd never worked for months on end because I had saved up tons of money when I lived in London. Anything I could save, I saved. So it was weird not to work for 3 months, but it was also weird to just get up and do what I want each day and like go to a temple or eat some food, or if I'm in Bangkok, buy some like juice on the street and just kind of like enjoy life and take I'm going to call it a mini retirement, if you will, versus like having to just slog it out all the time. And, I worked on like my resume and my CV and stuff during those 3 months and try to figure out like what I want to do when I come back to Canada. But it was really just a great way to experience life in another culture that I'd never done.
Wow, man, that sounds like one huge adventure. And presumably, is that where the name for the company came from, Take Some Risk, or is there another story behind that?
No, that's sort of where it came from. I wanted a name that was very exemplatory of like my life. And so, grammatically you'd say take a risk, but that implies you'd only take one risk in life. And I kind of believe that you need to take multiple risks if you want to like move forward. And we want our clients, to take risks as well. Obviously calculated risks, not just take stupid risks that are going to like bankrupt the company, but take risks of, trying out a new ad platform or trying a different piece of ad creative or doing something that's different than what their competitors are doing, and so we picked the name because it exemplifies my life of taking risks. It's what I want clients to do. I want clients often say to like grab my hand and basically jump out of a plane with me and hope we land, assuming we have parachutes, of course, and hope we land on the ground. But that can be really scary. And I think doing digital marketing can be scary for some people if they've not done it before. And so they've got to be able to take my hand and trust us and the team to put them on the right road to success.
And I'm curious, what did you learn from working in so many different cultures and overcoming language and culture barriers? There must have been some pretty big learning curves and lessons learned along the way there.
Yeah, I think totally. I remember I think it was when I was in Thailand. I'm asking my friends, like I'm a super nerd, so I like plan out my trips and where I want to go and what I want to do, and it's very detailed. I'm not as detailed these days. I still have a list of what I want to do, but maybe it's not as like granular of what I want to do each day. And one day I decided, all right, I'm going to go to this market that's supposed to be really famous for really good food, and I'm going to see the temple that's close by, and I'm going to walk there, even though it's probably like a 2 or 3 hour walk, because I've got nothing left to do for the day. It's like I'm on vacation basically for the next 10 weeks. And so I got up early. I started walking in that direction. I took some cool pictures along the way. I did the temple, came back. It was probably like, 12, 1 o'clock. It was definitely lunchtime. And I saw this little old woman, and she was like, had her cart, and she had salad, and she had fried fish. And the fried fish looked like really good. Kind of reminded me of my grandma when she used to cook it when she was alive. And so I tried to explain to the woman, oh, I'd like to buy, the peanut salad and the fish. And she wasn't really sure what I was saying. And what I realized after a woman came by and saw that I was really struggling to communicate what I wanted, she translated for me. And then she told me, we actually only usually buy just the salad or buy just the fish. As a culture, we don't buy both when it comes to lunchtime. I'm like, oh, that never really occurred to me. Usually you just, order what you want when you go to a restaurant or street vendor. I didn't think of like culturally, you just order one or the other at lunchtime. And so I think trying to like understand people and what makes us the same, but also what makes us different was the big lesson. Because even within Asia, each country, is very different. And even in places like Vietnam, like northern Vietnam is very different than southern Vietnam. Like you got Ho Chi Minh in the south, and that's a little bit older. It's kind of like all our uncles that come to family dinner and they're a bit older and stuck in their ways. Where like northern Vietnam and like Ho Chi Minh and things like that is kind of like the new cousin who came to dinner and has got all the latest technology. It's a bit hip. It's a bit more cosmopolitan. It's Eats Meets West. And so when I went through those 10 weeks, I was really just trying to understand each culture and people and try to be obviously respectful of each person's culture. And then, I'd taken that knowledge and how do we apply it to clients? One of our clients sells, bamboo PJs. And so, trying to get them to understand there isn't just like one kind of customer. There's customers who are older who buy it for, one reason being, menopause, or they have rashes from just like allergic issues, like they're allergic to fabric or stuff like that. And then the younger people buy it because, possibly they like the design or they just like the fabric and how it feels and stuff like that. So understanding people was a big lesson in trying to apply that to our customers and understanding the different kinds of customers we go after within any product we sell. And so it was just... it was a great trip and I learned a lot. And I've been back to Hong Kong once since then, and I love Hong Kong, even though it's expensive for a single person to go on their own. But I highly recommend people go and check out Hong Kong if they want to go to Asia. I also usually recommend people check out Laos, which sort of sits between Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. And most people ignore Laos, but I would say it's probably the best country I went to. Super laid back, tons of monks, really heavily French influenced. You can see Thailand and from the Mekong River. But if you want to get a sort of snapshot of a laid back lifestyle and go somewhere that's not super popular, but also understand a culture really well, I'd say like Laos is the best place to go because it's a super small country, but there's still a lot going on.
And I'm curious, as someone that meticulously planned trips like that as you were traveling around the world, did you do those plans old school with pen and paper and printouts all over the place, or was there a number of apps that you came to rely on?
A combination of both. So whenever I travel, especially in cities I don't know well, I usually have a map of the downtown area with me just in case, like, I'm always fearful my phone will get stolen or I'll lose it or something like that. So always have a sort of a pen and paper and mark down like where I'm staying versus, where I'm going for the day. But then I usually, if I'm in a country where, the mobile network is really cheap, I'll buy a local SIM card so I have internet to rely on my phone, and I'll use my phone like Google Maps, or I still use Foursquare, which I know lots of people don't use, but I find it's a great way to still keep track of like places I want to eat in a certain country. So I definitely rely on technology, but I always have a map as a backup because especially in a country you've never been to, sometimes you can get disoriented and like you think you're going north, but really you're heading south because you haven't like learned how the city's set up yet. So I do a bit of both because God forbid I lose my cell phone one day when I'm traveling. I'll need to figure out how to get back to where I'm going, especially if it's a place that nobody speaks English or they don't speak English very well and I'm struggling to communicate.
Oh, I think that's everybody's nightmare, losing their phone in a country where nobody speaks your language. Man, what did people used to do without their phones?
I think they just got lost, really.
Yeah,
like you got lost and you hope for the best.
So if you look back at your journey, how much have you seen technology change digital marketing? And from looking at that, what do you love and what do you hate about the changes that you've seen in that time?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because like I think because I work online and I'm a nerd, I love technology, I love video games, but I also try to spend less time online. Like we spend so much time online at work. I try not to, and it's really hard for me to have my own company to spend a lot of time online outside of work. And I think like the biggest shift is just we accept certain habits and assume we have to do things. And so what I mean by that is like, email is email. And back in the day, we had, ICQ and MSN and things like that. And if somebody had like a green light beside their name on like ICQ, whatever, you'd assume they're online, you'd message them. And, usually they'd message you back if they're right away. But, sometimes that they would just leave it on and like go to their friends. And you think they're there, but they're not. But it's still green because it hasn't gone to idle status yet. But I think with things like Slack, people see the green light, message you, and then assume they get a response right away. They won't take into account that maybe you've left your computer and you're not going to get back to them right away. So sometimes we treat things like Slack like it's IM when it's more of a work situation. So I think that's a big shift is taking a lot of our habits from other platforms and trying to like shoehorn it on current technology. So, a big thing I do is I turn off all my notifications on Slack, with the exception if you send me a DM. And even then, I might just delete the email that comes in. I won't really read it depending on like what Slack channel I'm in. And I think that's the big thing with technology these days is we spend more and more time online, but maybe it's not healthy time online all the time. We spend it online because we feel like we have to and because everybody else is spending all their time, but we get, what I call being digitally exhausted, where you spend so much time, you're just emotionally tired, where like it hurts to think, but you don't stop spending the time online, whether it's Netflix or Grindr or Tinder or whatever it is, because everybody else spends all their time online. And it's not the healthiest thing in the world. Like I did a talk this year actually about being digitally exhausted and this sort of 24-hour lifestyle, and I think it's important. I think as we head into next year, more people spend time offline. Like I've read a lot more this year. I read a ton last year, doing a lot more less digital things will make us, I think, better as a society, but also let us value and enjoy when we do spend the time online. I like talking on the phone. Lots of people I know don't like talking on the phone. They don't like leaving voicemails. I will leave friends voicemails. I'll usually text them as well just to make sure they got my message because I know friends don't listen to voicemail messages. But the change of technology has made us, I'm going to say, a bit lazy. Not quite lazy like the movie WALL-E, but I feel like we're headed in that direction where one day we're all just going to be really like overweight and have machines do everything because we just accepted like the way things were going, even though it wasn't healthy or the right direction for us to go as a society.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you there. And we will have a lot of startup founders listening to this podcast and people that have their own Kickstarter campaigns. So as we enter 2020, which sounds strange even saying that out loud, and a whole new decade, I mean, how can businesses grow their business or get a better momentum on their Kickstarter launch through pay-per-click campaigns? Is there anything you can share with about that?
Yeah, totally. I think Kickstarter, and what people I sometimes don't realize, Kickstarter is like any product launch you're going to have. What you really need to do is work in advance to capture email addresses. And you could capture email addresses, the old school way of like emailing your customers and asking if they have people they know who might want to buy the product. You could do the new school way, which is do a Facebook lead generation campaign, build a list of people who look like your customer base, or build a list of people who shop at stores you think match the kind of customer you want to go after, and build emails in advance so that when you launch, you're not launching to crickets, right? You spend, 4 weeks, 6 weeks before you're going to launch your Kickstarter getting people's email addresses. So when you launch on Kickstarter Day, you've got people to email, you've got people to sign up, you've got people to share it on social, you've got people to give you money. And so your success becomes a bit of a momentum. And as you build momentum, you can get press, you can get more people to give you money. Rarely does success for Kickstarter happen because you just launched it one day. Also making sure like your assets on Kickstarter are really good, whether it's images or video, making sure it's the best you can be, because I've seen lots of Kickstarters where the images are not that great, the video is hard to understand, isn't a great video. You've got to think of, your assets, whether it's video or photos, as basically your marketing. It's what people are going to decide whether they want to go forward with you or not. And if you've got really bad video, really bad images, people are just not going to give you money. There's lots of things that when you look at Kickstarter, people get so close to being funded, but they don't fund it because people don't like the images, or they don't like the options for the different tiers. Oftentimes I want to support something on Kickstarter, but I look at the different tiers of options to support, and like, then these tiers represent what I want to buy, or they want too much money. So making sure you price your tiers out is really important as well, because if you price it too high, or you've got weird scenarios where I've got to buy 4 versions of this one thing when I just want to buy 1 version of this one thing, you're going to lose out on people who could have supported you but couldn't afford it because they don't need 4 versions of what your Kickstarter is, or 3 versions of what your Kickstarter is. Like, I'm a single gay guy. I've got like my friends and my mom, but if my friends and my mom don't want what you're selling, I'm not going to buy 3 versions of it. I'm going to buy like 1 version of it for me.
Absolutely. And do you have any use cases or examples that will give people listening a kind of before and after picture of the kind of difference that those campaigns can make?
Yeah, for one of our clients, and especially the one who does bamboo PJs, when we took over the account back in April, they're bidding obviously on their own brand name on Google. They're bidding on, bamboo PJs and bamboo pajamas, bamboo sleepwear, and that was kind of it. And so what I did is I went in the account, I looked at what they did the last 2 years with the last agency, and try to understand, how people search for this stuff, especially that 99% of what, our client sells is the women's pajamas. They don't sell a lot of the men's, they don't sell a lot of the babies. It's a very small SKU set within those 2 areas. And so, I sent a tweet out to women that follow me on Twitter. I'm like, hey, can I ask you all a question? If you're going to search for pajamas, how are you going to do it? Because I'm a guy, like, I don't really know how women are going to search for it. And I didn't really want to just ask the women I know in person, because that's just my friends and they might just tell me what I want to hear. But going on Twitter will get me a larger swath of people I don't know, but maybe follow me or follow other women I follow. What came back was super interesting. Some people said they would search, for, ethical pajamas or sustainable pajamas or plaid pajamas, things I wouldn't have necessarily thought of right away. And so we started to build out more campaigns around, ethical pajamas, sustainable pajamas, and other search terms around that. And really the shift between, going from having, 30 or 40 sales a month to we'll probably pass 100 sales this month in December. And obviously part of that growth in December and even in November was related to Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But even if you remove that, we're still seeing we've essentially doubled the amount of sales we're getting, and we've maintained the ROAS that we want to have for clients. And ROAS, for those who don't know, is just return on ad spend. So it's how much money I make back for every dollar I spend in ads. And so that's kind of one way we've tried to understand people, talk to people, made campaigns better by writing better ad copy, bidding on better keywords, and just sending more qualified traffic to the point that more people are going to convert and buy the product, and especially buy the product at full price. The challenge with what our client sells, it's definitely on the higher end versus competitors. And so, the past agencies did a lot of time trying to send people to the sales page, or I'm spending a lot of time sending people to the full price item, because the more people I can buy full price with, the better my data is in Google, the better my data is in Facebook and for Instagram, which means I can remarket to more people who would more likely pay full price for the item versus customers who just want a discount. There's nothing wrong with people who want a discount, but I want more people who will pay full price, because that means we could probably get them back to buy, a second version or a third version when we launch new stuff next year. But this has been really 8 months of work. It wasn't like, I did all this work, yesterday or last month and we just saw the change happen. It's just months and months of research and talking to people and testing ad copy and testing keywords to get to the point we are now. But we're having a great December, and I'm excited, Neil. I'm excited.
Excellent. And you should be excited as well, because we are entering a new decade. So I've got to ask, what excites you about emerging technologies and also the future of digital marketing?
Yeah, I do like still playing with technology, as I said, even if I think we use it too much.
Yeah.
I don't know what next year holds, even though, it is a new year, it is a new decade. I assume cell phones will get smaller, which I don't love, because I feel like you're going to lose it one day. We'll probably see more platforms, in relation to like Snapchat or Snap it's called now, or Pinterest. So smaller platforms that are a bit more niche, for lack of a better word. I think people are trying to get back to where the internet was a decade ago, 15 years ago, where there was like niche communities and you joined a message board or a forum and you knew everyone in that forum or message board was kind of like you, in the sense they liked what you liked in terms of whatever the message board was about, whether it's a TV show or a board game or a movie or a video game. So I think we're going to see more of that into 2020 and see, Reddit become a lot more popular, because that's got hundreds of thousands of different niches about anything and everything you can think of, no matter how obscure. And so I think we'll see more people make that shift. People will still obviously use Facebook and still obviously use Snapchat, but they won't use it as much, and they're going to go to other places where they can have small communities, whether you're, older and you're a grandparent, and you want to find a grandparent type community for like what to do with your kids on not your kids, but your grandkids on summer vacation, versus you're a teen, a tween, you're in college and you joined a group to figure out like all the people who are from the East Coast to move to California for like school. So I think these communities are going to come back even stronger than they have been the last couple of years. And we're all going to try to spend like more time with like-minded people and make our lives better.
Oh, I've absolutely loved chatting with you today, and I'm sure your story is going to have resonated with so many people, and such an adventure that you've been on. But for people listening that want to find out more about you and take some risk, of course, what's the best way of finding you online and contacting your team if anyone listening does have any extra questions they'd like to ask you?
Totally. So, our domain name is just takesomerisk.com. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me or someone on the team. We've got an email, we've got a form box, we've got a Drift app on the site. And then I probably spend a lot of time, it might be too much time, on Twitter. So if you just go Dwayne Brown on Twitter, and that's Dwayne is in Duane, and then Brown, just like the color. You can message me on Twitter, and I'll probably get back to you a lot faster than from our website. I spend a lot of time on Twitter just because, being around the world, I've got friends around the world now, and so I'm always on Twitter chatting with people in different time zones. I am on Reddit, but it's not with my name. It's with my just username that I have. So I'd say our website and probably Twitter is the best way to reach out to me. Some people will probably try to find me on LinkedIn, and I am on LinkedIn, but I don't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I find it's just really boring, and it's kind of spammy at times, and it's just a drudge of stuff I don't care about.
Well, outside of your adventure, I love what you're doing there, helping e-commerce and SaaS and technology brands. But more than anything, I also, when I went on your site, I think it was last week, there was the ethos or your mission that you stand for. And it was, you believe in outcomes more than deliverables, which I think is so fantastic. But more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and speak with me today. I really appreciate it, Dwayne. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, Neil. I had a great time chatting. It's always fun just to chat with people and hear their stories and understand what's going on out there in the world and not get it into tunnel vision.
Wow, what a great guy Dwayne is there. And one of those guys I could just listen to all night, especially those stories about life as a digital nomad, drifting from 40 different countries with just a laptop and a free Wi-Fi connection. conjures up quite a romantic image, or a little bit like a rock and roll star going from town to town with nothing but a guitar on his back. But I know it probably wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, but I think it's not until you travel and immerse yourself in different cultures that you learn just how much we all have in common. I mean, I've done over 1,000 interviews on here and spoke to people in over 50 different countries and formed so many instant bonds and relationships that will last forever. So I do hope in some small way this podcast will help bring together people too. So please, this is your true calling. This is your opportunity and roll call to send me a message or a photo of where you listen to this podcast. And you can get me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Just look for Neil C. Hughes. I'm easy to find. Or even email me directly on techblogwriter@outlook.com. I'd love to hear from every single person that has listened to this episode today and was as moved and inspired by Dwayne's story as I was. So I'm giving you my full permission to fill up my inbox. So it's time for a bit of mischief on your part. So I'll wait patiently to see what you've got in store for me, and I'll return tomorrow with more tales from the world of tech. So thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.